RuneScape Dragonwilds is a game that gives you a huge amount of freedom, but because of that, it's also very easy to waste hours farming the wrong resources, crafting equipment you'll replace 5 minutes later, or simply not knowing what you should be working towards next. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the progression path that I personally use, starting from spawning in Ashenfall all the way through Bramblemead Valley, Fractured Plains, Bloodblight Swamp, Stormtouched Highlands, Fellhollow, Dowdun Reach, and finally Umbral Sands. The goal isn't to show you every secret or every collectible. In fact, I'm deliberately leaving out a lot of exploration for you to discover yourself, because that's one of Dragonwild's greatest strengths. Instead, this guide is designed to answer one simple question: what should I be doing next? I'll show you which upgrades are actually worth prioritizing, which resources you should start farming early, when to upgrade your gear, and how to leave every region fully prepared for the next one. Everyone has their own playstyle, and there are plenty of different ways to progress. This is simply the route that I found to be the smoothest, the most efficient, and the one I'd recommend to anyone playing through the game today. So after finishing the tutorial and speaking with Vanica, Doric and Zanik, you'll arrive in Bramblemead, and the wise old man is going to ask you to build your first base. This is where the game really begins, and if I was starting from scratch, this is pretty much what I would do. First of all, I like to build my bases near water, because you're going to need a constant supply of water for drinking, cooking, farming, and later on potion making. So having it right outside your base saves a lot of time, and you'll be thankful for this later. Don't waste hours making a huge house or decorating it, because we'll build a much better base later in the game. Right now, this is just a basic base of operations. You want to build your crafting table first, then your campfire and your bed. Once you've got those down, start collecting dirty water and turn it into clean water. I normally stockpile well over 100 right at the beginning, because you'll use it constantly throughout the game. For food, you don't really need to overcomplicate things. Rat roast is actually fantastic early on. You would have got this from killing a few rats earlier, and it's more than enough to carry you through this first section. So kill the rats you come across, cook the meat, and you'll have more than enough food without having to worry about that. And as you're exploring, start picking every flax plant that you see, and you should get some seeds for this, and that will also unlock this spinning wheel for you. So I would go ahead and make 1 or 2 ash farming spots at your base, and then go ahead and plant those flax seeds, because coarse thread becomes a bit of a bottleneck in this early start of the game. So if we can get ahead of ourselves by farming flax, it's really going to help us out in the long run. So now what we want to go ahead and do is craft ourselves an ash bow and some arrows. You're only really going to need 33 of these, so just make 1 set. Fang arrows are ideal if you've already picked up a few Kebbit fangs, but regular arrows are just fine. And the next target is to hunt deer. So we want to hunt as many as we can, because they give us everything that we need to progress. They drop antlers, which unlock the tannery, animal hide for making leather, and animal bones. All of these things you're going to need for your first proper armor set. A nice little tip here is to keep using the bark to bone spell whenever it's off cooldown. Basically free animal bones over time and saves you quite a bit of deer killing. Once you've unlocked the tannery, start turning all of that animal hide into leather, and between the leather and animal bones, you're going to have everything you need for the first real equipment upgrade. What we want to do now is go ahead and craft the full reinforced armor set along with the bone club. This is your first power level 2 setup, and it's more than capable of handling everything you'll face throughout the Brimmoor and Whispering Swamp. And of course, you've already got your ash bow, but you can go ahead and make an ash staff. You don't need to make magic armor, because you don't get any negative bonuses from the melee armor, so you can just make the staff and go ahead and use that. So if you do enjoy magical range, you're not going to be too punished by making this reinforced armor. I'd also recommend crafting a shield now, because blocking and parrying are incredible mechanics in this game, so it's worth getting comfortable with those now. And then what we can also do as well before leaving Brimmoor, I'd also spend 5 or 10 minutes at the agility course. You don't really need to grind agility yet, but a few laps is going to get you some early levels and access to the Gyrohawk amulet, because we don't really get access to a good trinket until Fellhollow. The Gyrohawk amulet is going to help provide us with a lot of extra agility XP, especially while we don't have a mount and we're just running around. So for me, this is probably the best early game trinket, and it's really easy to get. So at this point, you should have a simple base, plenty of clean water, a supply of rat roast, flax growing on your farm, full reinforced armor, a bone club, a shield, and the Gyrohawk amulet. Now it's time to progress the Dragon Slayer quest. So we want to head up to the Keep of Blue Flames. You're going to fight a handful of goblins the way, and there's actually a chance that they do drop the Goblin Swing Slash, which is a small upgrade of the bone club if you get lucky. Obviously, you don't need to go ahead and farm this, but it will be quite useful if you get it. So once we've got to the top, met Velgar for the first time, head back to the base, repair your gear, restock food, water, etc. Now what I would like to advise is go through the first vault. So before following the main quest and going into the Whispering Swamp, I'd strongly recommend checking out the Temple Woods vault to the south. Every enemy inside is only power level 2, so with your armor it shouldn't be difficult, and the rewards here are pretty good. You're going to get a lot of goodies, runes, crafting materials, but most importantly, this vault actually has 3 vault cores inside, which is going to be great for helping to get our lodestone network kick-started. So obviously you want to build your first lodestone back at your base, and now we are going to head out to the Whispering Swamp. So I would also advise to bring enough materials with you to build another lodestone once we get there as well. This is going to save us a lot of back and forth, and it's going to get us access to materials of the Whispering Swamp and allow us to get back to our base easier. Now we're going to head to the Whispering Swamp. It's on the east side is the vault that we need to access to progress the quest. And we don't need to panic here as well, because all of the enemies are power level 2 except the Abyssal Demon to the west. But we're just going to be sticking to the east side for now, so don't worry about that. When we do enter the area, we want to mine some clay, we want to gather swamp tar, haralander, bittercat mushrooms, and some marantils as well. So once we get our first piece of clay, we're going to unlock the kiln, the pottery wheel, and the potion station. These are our next set of base upgrades, and you're going to need these very soon for the anti-poison potions, which we're going to need for Velgar and also the Blightwood Swamp. So we don't need to spend ages farming here just yet. As long as we set up the lodestone, we can come back and get this stuff whenever we need it. But before entering the vault, just go ahead and place your second lodestone outside, so if anything goes wrong, you can just teleport straight back here. Complete the vault, speak to Spitfoot and progress the Dragon Slayer quest, defeat the Rat King, and make sure you pick up the 2 vault cores inside. Return to your base, build the new crafting station, stock up on supplies one last time, then speak to the wise old man again. With that done, Bryn Mawr is complete. The Dragon Slayer quest moves on to Gornfell, and we're ready for the next stage of the game. So welcome to Gornfell. This is the second major stage of the game, and it's made up of 3 separate regions: the Fractured Plains, Stormtouched Highlands, and the Bloodblight Swamp. In this section, we're only focusing on the Fractured Plains. Our goal here isn't to fight Velgar just yet, it's to build the crafting infrastructure that we'll use for the rest of the game and upgrade ourselves to full tier 3 gear. Before we get into the progression though, let's talk about what to expect in this region. The main enemies you'll encounter here are the Garou. You're going to find Berserkers, Hunters, Druids, Thanes, and eventually Garou Kings. They are much stronger than the Goblins back in Bryn Mawr, so until you've upgraded your equipment, I recommend fighting them one at a time wherever possible. Once you've got your tier 3 gear though, they become a little bit more manageable. And this is also where you're going to find one of the best food sources in the early game: Dwellberries. Start picking up the Dwellberries, and then you're going to get some seeds which you can plant back at your base. And then also if you combine them with some wheat, which you can also grow as well, you can make Dwellberry Crunch. This is going to heal 70 health. This is a really nice food to have, and it's super easy to mass produce. Honestly, this is the food I use for most of this next section of the game, so it's well worth setting up now. And now that we know what we're dealing with, let's start progressing the region. So every new region does follow the same basic idea. Our priority is always survivability first. That means finding the new ore, unlocking the new crafting stations, and upgrading our equipment before we move any deeper into the game. As soon as you enter Fractured Plains, your first objective is to find either copper ore node or a tin ore node. You don't actually need both immediately. Simply mining one of them actually unlocks the furnace and the bronze bars. So spend a little time exploring and being safe, and get as much copper and tin ore as you can before heading back to the base. Go ahead and build the furnace. You're also going to need some charcoal, which you can get from the kiln using any type of log. Once you've smelted your first bronze bar, you're going to get some major upgrades. So now you're going to have access to the blacksmith bench, the armor bench, the mystic forge, and the fletching bench. These are some of the most important crafting stations in the entire game. You're going to continue using these all the way up through to adamant and rune equipment. So although they're a little expensive now, they're absolutely worth investing in. So I know this can be a little bit overwhelming to begin with, but I'm going to tell you, I would always start with the blacksmith bench. This is going to give you access to the bronze pickaxe and the bronze logging axe. Bronze pickaxe makes gathering bronze a lot faster because you're going to need plenty of bronze bars in this area. And then the bronze logging axe is going to help you to unlock oak trees, which is the next tier of bows and battle staffs. Next, I would go ahead and unlock the sawmill so you can start producing ash planks. And then the ash planks are going to give you access to the loom, which then is going to give you access to rough cloth and wool cloth. So once you've got those locked in, I would go ahead and build the armor bench next. Finally, dealer's choice now. You can either build the Mystic Forge or the Fletching Bench next, depending on your preferred combat style. If you're going to be using magic, build the Mystic Forge. If you're using range, go with the Fletching Bench. But you're eventually going to need to build both anyway, so the order really isn't too important. And obviously to build these, you will notice you're going to need some vault cores, so you can return to the previous vault once it has reset and go ahead and collect those 3 again, or you can go ahead and explore new vaults. As I said at the start, I'm not going to hold your hand through this. You can go ahead and find some vaults around the area. My job is just to let you know what you're looking for. So at this point, the game becomes a lot more about gathering materials than discovering new mechanics. The main farming targets in this region are the copper ore, tin ore. Go ahead and kill plenty of wolves, sheep and deer, because they're going to give you the wool and also the leather as well. And once you've built the armor bench, you're probably going to notice that the new armor recipes require hard leather. So to make this, all you're going to need is adhesive. And adhesive is made by putting swamp tar into the kiln. Obviously you can get this from the Whispering Swamp. And once you've upgraded your tannery, combine the adhesive with leather to produce hard leather. You're going to be using a lot of this throughout Gornfell, so don't be surprised if you find yourself making quite a bit of it. It is quite a grind to go back and get all these items and keep returning to the base. You're going to get into a nice fluid motion of this, of coming back to your base, doing your farming runs, sleeping, putting stuff in the crafting station, making some new stuff and getting back out there to go and get some more resources, which is typically the theme of most of the game. So once you've got all these new crafting stations, it's time to finally upgrade your gear. For melee players, we've got the bronze armor set. For range players, we've got the hard leather armor set, and if you're using magic, we get the wizard robes. For the bronze armor and the hard leather armor set, they're very easy to come by. Obviously they use the same materials, but if you're using magic, you're probably going to need some anima infused bark. You'll find these underneath the giant glowing trees underneath the fractured plains, and then you can go ahead and bring them back to your kiln to create the wild anima. Combine that with the rough cloth and wool thread to create the wizard robe. And then for the weapons, don't feel like you have to replace everything immediately. Like if you did get the goblin swing slash back in Brynmore, it's still perfectly viable here, so don't feel pressured into replacing that straight away. Otherwise, if you do have stuff left over, I definitely recommend the bronze sword or bronze mace for melee. And then for range, you don't really have too many options. You either go the longbow or the short bow. And for magic, you even have less options, the oak battle staff. But I do love this oak battle staff. It is really good. It's excellent against the wolves and the Garou throughout this area, especially if you use the right click stun. It's really good for crowd control. So while you're progressing naturally through the fractured plains, don't forget to keep expanding your base a little bit as well. This is the point where your starter base begins turning into something more permanent. Keep your flax growing, start farming dwellberries and wheat. Don't be afraid to spend a little time building up your crafting area. These crafting stations are going to carry you through the rest of the game. So now we've got our full level 3 gear and our new level 3 weapons. We are ready to enter the Stormtouched Highlands. As I said, you can spend as much time as you want in this area. You don't need to rush through this game. It is a beautiful game and you can spend more time here. Come back here later, entirely up to you. But before leaving the Fractured Plains, make sure you do visit Valgar's Rise and speak to Cathan's Ghost. This is going to progress that Dragon Slayer quest and introduces the Challenge Horn. Don't worry about crafting that just yet, we're going to cover it in the next steps, but Cathan simply tells us that we'll eventually need and will naturally collect those materials in the next 2 regions. So before moving on, this is what I'd make sure that you've completed. You've got all 4 permanent crafting stations, you've got the bronze pickaxe and the bronze logging axe, you've upgraded to a full tier 3 armor set for your preferred combat style, you've crafted the other 2 tier 3 weapons, you've started farming dwellberries and wheat back at the base, and also spoken to Cathan's Ghost and progressed the quest. So with all of that done, we're ready for the Stormtouched Highlands. This is where we'll unlock iron equipment, gather the materials for the Challenge Horn, and begin preparing for one of the biggest upgrades before fighting Valgar, the Abyssal Whip. So we've reached the final stage of the early game. Everything we've done up until this point has been building towards one objective: defeating General Valgar. From here onwards, we're going to upgrade into tier 4 gear, unlock one of the strongest weapons in the game, complete Dragon Slayer, and prepare ourselves for everything Fellhollow has to throw at us. Technically, you can choose whether to visit the Stormtouched Highlands or the Bloodblight swamp first, but I really recommend heading to the Stormtouched Highlands first because it makes absolutely everything else much easier. The Stormtouched Highlands is a power level 4 region. Enemies hit noticeably harder than anything we've fought before, and the constant lightning strikes makes exploring a little bit more dangerous. Thankfully, we aren't planning on spending long here. The first visit really is just about gathering materials. Priority 1. Iron ore. Just like every new region, our first priority is finding the new ore. This time it's iron. Mine as much iron ore as you can carry. Seriously, you're gonna need a lot of it. Take everything back to your furnace and start smelting iron bars. Don't worry if this takes a few trips because iron is a massive jump in power and completely worth the investment. And while you're exploring, you're also going to come across granite deposits. Go ahead and mine a few. Granite unlocks the grindstone. We don't actually need it immediately, but unlocking it now saves another trip later. You'll also notice some rams wandering around the Highlands. Kill enough to collect several ram horns because these are used to craft the loom harness upgrade. This upgrade lets you create padded cloth. Every combat star needs the padded cloth for the tier 4 armor, so don't skip killing these. Once you've collected plenty of iron ore, ram horns and a bit of granite, head back to your base. The first thing I would upgrade is the loom. With the loom harness installed, you can combine rough cloth and wool cloth into padded cloth. Now we finally have access to tier 4 armor. And before doing anything else, we want to upgrade our gear. Again, priority in every region should always be survivability. The stronger you are, the easier the rest of the progression becomes. For melee players, you can craft the full iron armor set, iron shield and iron sword. For ranged players, craft the studded leather set. Magic players can also craft the dark mage robes using silver bars a little later if they want, but don't worry if you don't have those just yet. The important thing is simply getting yourself into the tier 4 equipment before moving on. Then next up, we're going to need around about 6 to 8 anti-poison potions. By now you should already have the ingredients from the Whispering Swamp. You're going to need these because our next destination is the Bloodblight Swamp. Bloodblight Swamp is probably the most dangerous area we've explored so far because most of the environment wants to poison you. So if we go in there, we drink an anti-poison potion before heading in, bring plenty of Dwellberry Crunch, lots of water, and don't forget another lodestone. And our first goal here is simple. We want to kill the Abyssal Demon. So with your new iron gear and iron sword, this fight is far easier than trying to take it earlier in the game. Once it dies, you're going to receive the Abyssal Spine. Whatever you do, don't bank it, keep it in your inventory because we're going to need it in just a moment. While exploring the swamp, there's several important resources we also want to collect before leaving. We need some Blightwood, Bloodwood Sap, Swampweed, Snapdragon, and Poison Ichor. Blightwood lets us craft the iron pickaxe along with the Blightwood bow and Blightwood battle staff. This is over on the east side, just by the trees here. Swampweed becomes swamp thread, but we can get that near the water areas in the swamp. Snapdragon unlocks stronger potions for later in the game, and the Poison Ichor is one of the ingredients needed for our next weapon. And the Bloodwood Sap is one of the final ingredients needed for the challenge horn. That is all down at the top in the south of the map. You got to kill a couple of Garou and then you can go ahead and get about 3 to 5 Bloodwood Saps. You only need one, but you can get a few if you like. If you're playing magic, you'll also find silver ore throughout this region. You can use this to craft the dark mage armor set if you want to stay up to date with your magic gear. Now what we need to do is head to the vault in the south of the swamp. Partway through, you're going to reach a hidden dragonkin statue, which you can access by wind stepping up here. And while you're still carrying the Abyssal Spine, interact with the statue. Doing this unlocks the crafting recipe for the Abyssal Whip. This is one of the biggest power spikes in the entire early game, and it's your first masterwork weapon. It's an iconic RuneScape weapon and it absolutely destroys everything between here and Fellhollow. And if you're planning on upgrading any weapon using the Ascension cores, this is one of the ones I would definitely recommend investing in. So now you can head back to the base, craft the Abyssal Whip, craft an iron pickaxe using the Blightwood you've collected. If you're playing ranged or magic, this is also the perfect time to upgrade the Blightwood bow or Blightwood battle staff. With those upgrades complete, we're almost ready for Velgar. One last thing though, we do have to head back to the Stormtouched Highlands one final time with our iron pickaxe. Go ahead and mine the dragon tooth from the enormous dragon skeleton head. Now we need to go ahead and craft the challenge horn. You take the Bloodwood Sap and the dragon tooth and you add 5 bronze bars. That's the final item required to summon General Velgar. I'm not going to turn this into our boss guide because that's not what this video is, but if you followed this progression route, you're already more than prepared. You should have full tier 4 armor, an Abyssal Whip, tier 4 ranged and magic weapons if you're using those combat styles, plenty of anti-poison potions, lots of Dwellberry Crunch and your challenge horn. Head to Velgar's tower, place the challenge horn onto the altar and begin the fight. One small tip I'll give, if you're fighting with melee, stay close to Velgar, and doing that is going to prevent him using some of his longer range poison attack, which does make the fight a little bit easier. And once Velgar falls, speak to the wise old man outside the tower. This completes Dragon Slayer. As your reward, you're going to get the Dragonblight shield, giving you your second masterwork item. So that's it before Gornfell progression. Looking at our checklist, we should have full tier 4 armor for your preferred combat style, tier 4 weapons, the Abyssal whip unlocked and crafted, the Dragonblight shield, iron pickaxe, iron logging axe, plenty of lodestones available for future regions, anti-poison potions stocked up, a good supply of Dwellberry Crunch, and Dragon Slayer completed. At this point, you're done with Gornfell. That's the early game officially over. Everything from here changes. Fellhollow is where Dragonwilds really opens up. You start building a permanent base, unlock far stronger equipment, begin collecting masterwork gear across every combat style, and start prepping for mid and late game instead of simply surviving. So without further ado, let's head to Fellhollow. So, welcome to Fellhollow. This is where Dragonwilds really starts to open up. Up until now, we've mainly been progressing through the story, unlocking the next tier of gear and moving from one region to the next. Fellhollow is a little bit different. It's much larger, much more dangerous, and gives you far more freedom in how you progress. Our overall objective is still straightforward. We're here to complete the Withering Heights quest, defeat Imaru, and unlock Dowdun Reach. But before we even think about fighting Imaru, we're going to have to massively increase our power. Just like every previous region, our first priority is survivability. Let's get ourselves into tier 5 gear as quickly as possible. Before we jump into progression, it's worth knowing what Fellhollow throws at you. This region introduces the Wither mechanic, which is a new world mechanic. Enemy variety also ramps up massively. You're going to encounter dragon wolves, green dragons, zogres, rotsworn warriors, rotsworn archers, mages, skeletons, undead soldiers, and plenty of other corrupt enemies throughout the region. Death is definitely on the cards here. The good news is that if you follow this progression route, you'll very quickly reach a point where these enemies become much more manageable. And before we get into the crafting progression, there's 3 optional quests that I think are absolutely worth doing. The first one is the Wild Hunt, which unlocks the Terror Bird mount. Fellhollow is absolutely massive, and having a mount saves an unbelievable amount of traveling. And lucky for you, I've already made a full guide on this quest, so if you haven't unlocked it yet, I'd highly recommend doing it. The second is Even More Restless Ghosts. This rewards the Dorgesh-Kaan crossbow, which I genuinely think is one of the best crossbows currently available once you begin upgrading it with Ascension cores. And finally, there's the Seeking Salvation quest, which rewards the Salve amulet. If you struggle with Imaru later on, this amulet makes the fight significantly easier. I already have the guides for all 3 of these quests, so I won't cover them in detail here. So just like every new region, our first objective is unlocking the new material tier. This time, that's coal. As soon as you mine your first coal node, you'll unlock the blast furnace. Steel bars are made by combining coal with iron ore. The nice thing is that iron ore is everywhere throughout Fellhollow, so you won't need to return to previous regions to farm it. And while you're exploring, there's 4 important resources you should always be collecting, and the ones that I think you should target first: coal, willow logs, dragon hide, and corpse cotton. Once you chop your first willow tree, you're going to unlock the recipes for the steel pickaxe and also the steel logging axe, and more importantly the willow farming plots, which I'll come to in a second. Then we want to kill plenty of dragon wolves while we're exploring. To begin with, they drop the dragon hides, which can be turned into dragon hide leather at the tannery. You're going to need that for armor, ascension cores, and several important crafting recipes. Trust me, you're going to need a lot more dragon hide than you probably expect. You'll also start finding corpse cotton plants throughout Fellhollow. These explode when harvested, but they'll be your primary source of fine thread. Just like flax earlier in the game, start planting all the corpse cotton seeds that you find in the willow plots. Fine thread quickly becomes one of the biggest bottlenecks in this region, so getting your farm run early on makes this much easier. So we're going to head back to the base and build the blast furnace. Unlike the regular furnace, this one uses fuel pellets instead of charcoal. Thankfully, fuel pellets are simple to make. They only require adhesive, coarse animal fur, and charcoal, materials that we already know how to gather. Now we can finally make steel bars, and we're going to need quite a few of them. The final ingredient you need for your tier 5 gear is sacred oil. This one sounds complicated but pretty straightforward. All you need to do is kill the various rotsworn enemies around Fellhollow. They drop withered hearts, which you can process in the kiln into ectoplasm. Then you collect the undead bones that are from these enemies and also other zombies. You can take those to the grindstone to turn those into the necrotic bone meal. Combine those together at the potion station and you'll get the sacred oil. So as we said, just like every other region, our first priority is always survivability. For melee players, we want to craft the full steel armor armor set together with either the steel sword or the steel mace. Personally, I don't tend to make a shield here because of the Dragonblight shield. I really like the effect that it has. But if you want to upgrade for more block, that's completely fine as well. For ranged players, in a little while we can craft the green dragon hide armor, and for magic players we can start working towards the split bark armor set. This requires hollow bark from the dead trees throughout Fellhollow region together with the fine cloth, which you can make at the loom with gold bars and fine thread. You can return to the Blightwood swamp to get yourself some gold ore, and while you're mining the gold ore as well, you might find some sapphires which we're going to need to craft the willow bows. So now once we've gotten to ourselves full steel, we can actually start taking on the green dragons if you did want to get the range armor, and we're going to need to kill a few of them anyway. So once we have our full steel and our new steel weapon, we can now tackle the region effectively. We're back on a level playing field, and then now it's actually time for one of the biggest upgrades. We're actually going to upgrade the Abyssal whip. Added to the game is the Ascension Core system. You're going to need a tier 5 Ascension Core. For that you need steel bars, dragon hide leather, fine cloth, and enough tier 5 Ascension shards. The tier 5 Ascension shards mainly come from green dragons. Zogas and Imaru do drop them, but obviously we haven't killed Imaru yet, and Zogas are an RNG chance, so you can spend a little while farming green dragons until you've got enough materials. Then you can go ahead, make the Ascension Core and upgrade the Abyssal whip. Now you have a tier 5 masterwork weapon, and this thing destroys Fellhollow. Yes, there are other weapons available in the area, the shadow sword, the zombie axe, the necromancer staff. They are all excellent weapons, but most of them require side quests or rely on RNG drops, but I do have full guides for these. For a progression guide, I genuinely think upgrading the Abyssal whip is by far the best investment at this time. If you want those other weapons afterwards, I've already made dedicated guides covering every weapon available in Fellhollow, which you can check out. By now, naturally, throughout the course of your exploration of Fellhollow, you've probably collected plenty of soul fragments. So instead of letting them pile up in your inventory, let's head over and speak to Death. Death isn't just a part of the story, he is also a vendor as well. So using your soul fragments, you can purchase combat trinkets for every playstyle. If you're playing melee, you want to go and buy the Amulet of Strength. Ranged, buy the Amulet of Accuracy, and if you're playing magic, go ahead and buy the Amulet of Magic. Once you bought it, head back to your jeweler's bench and craft those things. These are quite good upgrades on paper, especially considering we've been using the Gyrohawk Amulet up until this point, and it's one of the final upgrades I'd recommend before taking on Imaru. Food kind of gets an upgrade in Fellhollow. Dwellberry Crunch is still honestly probably your best bet for just efficiency and ease of use. If you've been farming Dwellberries since Gornfell, you should already have hundreds ready to go. And Fellhollow does introduce pumpkins. I do recommend farming these as well, and combined with irit leaves harvested using the steel logging axe, you can make pumpkin spice infusion. These heal you over time, making them fantastic during long fights like green dragons, Zogas, and especially Imaru. And I still use them in tier 7, and I envisage that I will still be using them during the raid as well. So once you've upgraded all your equipment, it's finally time to finish the region. To reach Imaru, you'll first need to break the 3 cursed seals. The first one is inside the vault beneath the waterfall. The second one in Silverthorn Keep after defeating the green dragon. Third one is located in the western settlement after a few small challenges. Once all 3 seals have been broken, you'll gain access to Imaru. Again, I'm not going to turn this into a boss guide. I've already made a dedicated Imaru guide if you need help learning the mechanics. The only difference now is that you'll probably be using a tier 5 Abyssal whip instead of the steel sword I originally used, which does make the fight a little bit easier. So just bring plenty of Dwellberry Crunch, some pumpkin spice infusions, your best upgraded gear, and you should be in a very strong position. Once Imaru has been defeated, speak with Death. This completes the Withering Heights quest. You'll receive the Dragon Curse shield, unlocking your next Masterwork shield before Death directs you towards Cathan and the entrance to Dowdun Reach. So a little checklist before leaving Fellhollow. I'd make sure that you've got your full tier 5 armor for your preferred combat style, your tier 5 Ascension upgraded Abyssal whip, your combat trinket of choice from Death, steel tools, plenty of fine thread and corpse cotton, pumpkin farming underway, the Terrorbird mount if you've completed the wild hunt, and Withering Heights completed. At this point, you're ready for Dowdun Reach. The difficulty does take another jump from here, but you follow this progression route, you'll arrive with everything you need to handle it comfortably. Dowdun Reach is where the game really starts to open up again. After defeating Imaru and completing the Withering Heights, speak to Cathan to begin the Black Knight's Fortress quest and head into Dowdun Reach. Unlike previous regions, there aren't many farming upgrades here. Most of your progression comes from killing enemies rather than harvesting resources, so expect to spend most of your time fighting Zamorak forces, demons and Black Knights. Before we start, here's what to expect. It's a power level 6 region, so enemies hit noticeably harder than Fellhollow. You'll be fighting Black Knights, Zamorak warriors, Zamorak mages, Hell Rats, Hellhounds, Blue Dragons, and plenty of tougher enemies throughout the fortress. In terms of food, 12-berry crunch is honestly still very viable. It will carry you through most of this region. If you do want something stronger though, this is the first area where I think fishing really starts to become genuinely worthwhile. Lava eels heal for 100 health, so they're excellent upgrade if you don't mind spending a little time fishing. You can also get the armored catfish, which is 120. Pair those with a pumpkin spice infusion and you've got more than enough healing for everything here. The only bottleneck there is it just takes a little bit of time to fish these. And like every new region, our first priority is survivability. We want full tier 6 gear before worrying about the boss. The very first enemies I recommend farming are the Zamorak mages. These drop mage packs, and the mage packs contain mystic fibers. They're incredibly important because they're spun into the mystic thread at the spinning wheel and then woven into mystic cloth at the loom. Mystic cloth becomes one of the core ingredients for almost every tier 6 armor set, so start collecting these immediately. While you're doing that, I would also advise to kill hell rats and hellhounds wherever you see them. They drop these small ash piles which have a chance at containing both the cursed essence and vile ashes. We need both of these moving forward, so it's worth collecting every single one. Once you've gathered some mystic thread, the very first tool I recommend crafting is the Mithril logging axe. This requires 8 Mithril bars, 6 willow lugs and 4 mystic thread. You'll already be able to mine Mithril ore using your steel pickaxe, so gather plenty while exploring the region. Smelt your Mithril bars, craft the logging axe and then head straight for the maple trees. Maple logs are going to unlock a huge amount of progression here. With maple logs available, your next goal is crafting the mithril pickaxe. To make it, you'll need mithril bars, maple logs and cursed leather. And the cursed leather is made by combining the cursed essence you've been collecting with draconic leather at the tannery. You should already have plenty of draconic leather left over from Fellhollow, and you'll also keep getting more from the warrior packs as you progress through Dowdun Reach. Once you've upgraded to the mithril pickaxe, we unlock another major crafting chain. We can now mine limestone. This usually appears near water, so go ahead and mine that. Take it back to the grindstone to turn it into ground limestone and combine that with ground sandstone to make the molten glass. Then craft glass vessels at the jeweler's bench. Those glass vessels are used in lots of new potion recipes, but more importantly they let us create the demonic oil, which is one of the biggest bottlenecks in this region. And to make the demonic oil we combine necrotic bone meal, vile ashes and glass vessel at the brewing cauldron. You'll already have vile ashes from the small ash piles, while necrotic bone meal is simply made by grinding those undead bones. Once you've unlocked the demonic oil, you've got almost everything needed for your tier 6 equipment. For melee players, go ahead and craft the mithril armor set along with the mithril sword. That's what I'm using for this playthrough, but of course you can take any weapon of choice. If you're playing magic, you can craft the full mystic robes, and if you're playing ranged, we'll upgrade into the blue dragon hide shortly. Personally, I'm keeping the dragon curse shield from Imaru rather than crafting a mithril shield, but either option works perfectly well. And with your armor sword, it's time to upgrade the rest of your equipment. We can craft the maple battle staff if you're using magic, and if you're playing ranged, I'd highly recommend making the mithril crossbow. You'll need maple logs, mithril bars and mystic thread, and I actually think range performs really well against the Black Knight Titan later on. But if you do want the maple longbow or shortbow instead, you're going to need a few diamonds, which you can get by mining coal or from the previous Zogas. With all our tier 6 gear, we're ready for our next upgrade, so it's time to go and hunt some blue dragons. Our new tier 6 gear makes these fights much easier, and they'll provide the blue dragon leather needed for the blue dragon hide armor set if you're playing ranged. While you're farming throughout the region, you'll naturally collect enough materials to craft a tier 6 ascension core as well, which again of course is an optional step. At this point I'd absolutely recommend upgrading your favorite weapon. For me that is the Abyssal whip again, but if you've been using the Dorgesh-Kaan crossbow or any other vestige from Fellhollow, the zombie axe, etc., this is a great opportunity to keep scaling it up. The ascension core system works really well to open up your options from this point onwards. Then once you've finished all your upgrades, all that's left is the main quest. The Black Knight's Fortress is actually pretty straightforward. Your objective is simply to explore Dowdun Reach and locate all 13 shards needed to unlock the Titan. I'm not going to spoil where every shard is because exploration is half the fun here, and you'll naturally gather loads of materials while searching anyway. And once you've activated all 13 shards, you're ready for the Black Knight Titan. Bring your best food, upgraded equipment and whatever combat style you've chosen. If you want the full boss guide, I've already made one, so I'll link that in the description for you. After defeating the Black Knight Titan, the gate behind him opens up, giving you access to the final region of the game, the Umbral Sand, and that's where we're gonna finish our progression guide. So you've just arrived in Umbral Sands. This is where Dragonwilds really starts opening up. Instead of simply rushing towards the next boss, you're now unlocking tier 7 equipment, masterwork upgrades, Moongaroo reputation, the Nightmare Crucible, Spike Caves, and some of the strongest gear currently available in the game. As always, this isn't the only way to progress, but after playing through the region myself, this is the route I'd recommend. The first thing we want to do is start mining adamant ore. You'll find adamant ore nodes scattered all around Umbral Sands, and by combining 3 adamant ore with 3 coal and a blast furnace, you'll make adamant bars. These are going to be the foundation for almost everything we craft in this region, and our first major goal is the adamant logging axe. To make it, we're going to need 8 adamant bars, 6 maple logs, and 4 desert thread. Desert thread is incredibly easy to get. Just collect desert weed throughout the region and spin it at the spinning wheel. Once you've got everything together, go ahead and craft the adamant logging axe. This immediately unlocks yew trees, which is our first major progression milestone. Now that we can chop yew trees, there are a few things I recommend doing straight away. First, make yourself a few yew farming plots, then start farming desert weed, fibrous pipe cactus, and bunny cactus. You're going to use all 3 of these materials constantly throughout Umbral Sands, so the earlier you start farming them, the better. The second thing I'd use those yew logs for is upgrading your tannery. Build the advanced tannery. This increases it to 3 crafting slots, and more importantly, lets you start making scorched leather. Scorched leather becomes one of the most important crafting materials in the region, and every tier 7 armor set requires it. To make scorched leather, you'll need draconic leather, calcite shells, and acrid adhesive. Calcite shells come directly from calcite enemies, or you can upgrade the calcite shell fragments into full shells at the tannery. And for acrid adhesive, you'll first need calcite ichor. You can get this from the enemies, but honestly the fastest method is farming the calcite eggs scattered around the desert. Process the ichor in a kiln to make the adhesive, and draconic leather, you know how to get this by now. But you can also purchase it from the Mugaru merchants once you have built enough reputation with them. Once you've got those ingredients together, start stockpiling scorched leather. Trust me, you're going to need some. And while we are gathering materials, there's a few other resources worth collecting at the same time. You'll want plenty of desert thread, which later becomes desert cloth, using the cactus fibers from the fibrous pipe cactus. And whenever you're killing the cot heart enemies, make sure you're opening their cot packs. These contain elder curiosities and obsidian devices. Both of these can be ground down at the grindstone into ground obsidian before being smelted into refined obsidian. You're also going to want to mine gypsum nodes and go ahead and grind that into ground gypsum. Then combine this with acrid adhesive and dihydrogen monoxide, which you can buy from the Mugaru merchants using Garu chit, and these combined together make the gypsum wax. Finally, keep an eye on those merchants themselves. Garu weave is sold by the Mugaru vendors and is another core crafting material for tier 7. Once you've gathered those resources, it's time to make your first tier 7 equipment. If you're playing melee, you'll be crafting the adamant armor set. If you're using magic, you'll want the infinity robes, and for this you're going to need infinity cloth, which is made by combining desert cloth with shimmer scale powder, which you get by grinding down any calcite wings you find from killing them. If you're playing ranged, you'll eventually want the red dragon hide armor. You'll need to start killing some red dragons before tanning their hides into red dragon hide leather. Personally, I'd make the adamant set first. It makes killing the dragons a little bit easier. So now we can upgrade our weapons as well. The adamant greatsword is my personal recommendation. Its special attack has a huge sweeping attack that absolutely tears through groups of enemies, making it incredibly useful for later on during the Trials of Fuzan. Of course, there are plenty of other adamant weapons available, so if another weapon better suits your playstyle, feel free to go for that instead. We'll also be making the adamant pickaxe, giving you access to all of the mining content in the region. And if you're playing magic, you can now make the master's staff. This requires the refined obsidian, infinity cloth, gypsum wax, yew logs, and dragon stones. Dragon stones come from mining the adamant ore nodes, so you'll probably have collected a few already. And if you're playing range, you're going to be able to get the adamant crossbow. Personally, I still prefer the crossbows over bows, but if you'd rather make a longbow or short bow, that's absolutely an option as well. These also require dragon stones. And of course, I've got a complete guide covering every weapon available in Umbral Sands if you'd like to see all of your options before committing to one. Next up is food. At this point, I'd highly recommend making a desert net. It only requires 2 desert thread and lets you catch monkfish around Umbral Sands. So while your bunny cactus are growing, cook the cactus steaks, combine them with the monkfish fillets, and you'll be able to make monkfish skewers. These are currently the best food in the game, in my opinion. They heal 120 health, and they also improve the regeneration from pumpkin spice infusions. Together, they make surviving both the Trials of Fuzan and the Fight Caves dramatically easier. I'd also recommend some strong tea. You can buy the tea leaves from the Mugaru. Go ahead and dry them in the kiln, grind them down, and then brew them together with maple syrup. Strong sweet tea restores your rest, making it fantastic for the longer encounters later in the region, and especially the Fight Caves. At this point, I'd also recommend progressing to the early stages is our Viclatherin's little helper. One of the first major rewards is the magic carpet mount. Umbral Sands is absolutely enormous, so having a flying carpet makes getting around the region so much easier. Easily one of the best quality of life upgrades in the game. And before taking on Fuzan, there's a couple of optional things I'd recommend. The first is farming those red dragons. Not only do you need their hides for the ranged armor, but they also have a chance to drop the Amulet of Glory. It's currently one of the strongest amulets in the game, but if RNG isn't on your side, don't worry. The unholy symbol from Dowdun Reach or even the Amulet of Strength is still gonna do the job perfectly well. You can also start tackling the Nightmare Crucible once you get to a certain stage in the main quest. Unlike the previous regions, Ascension Cores don't need to be crafted here. Instead, they're rewarded for completing the different Nightmare Crucible encounters found around Umbral Sands, of which there are 4. I actually upgraded my Abyssal Whip before attempting Fuzan. That said, I did still find myself using the Adamant Greatsword more often during the trials because the sweeping special attack is simply so much better at dealing with large groups of enemies. So if you've been using the Dorgesh-Kaan crossbow throughout the series, I'd also recommend upgrading that before fighting Fuzan. But honestly, by this stage, there's so many Vestiges and masterwork weapons available that you can really just build around whatever playstyle you're enjoying the most. Once you're happy with your setup, it's time to finish Viclatherin's little helper. Final challenge is the Trials of Fuzan. Fight your way through all 10 waves before taking on Fuzan himself. Once you've defeated him, you're going to receive the Dragonfire Shield, another fantastic tier 7 masterwork item. You'll also unlock full access to the Fight Caves. I've already got a complete Fight Caves guide if you need help earning your Fire Cape. From here, you are in an incredibly strong position. You've got full tier 7 equipment, access to the Nightmare Crucible for the Ascension Cores, powerful masterwork upgrades, Fight Caves, and some of the strongest weapons and armor currently available in Dragonwilds. Only thing left now is preparing for the Scorned Wilderness.